morning, everyone. My name is Tania Isaac, and I'm a choreographer. I've been in Philadelphia for many, many years now. I moved originally from St. Lucia, ended up studying dance at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, which was a huge temperature and culture shock. Ended up in Philadelphia doing my MFA at Temple, and have loved the city and loved the creative spirit in the city and the kinds of artists that we grow here. And so it's been an interesting sort of trajectory between here and New York and different parts of the world. Sorry, my whole family is suffering from the flu, and I'm trying really hard not to give into it. So I might have lost that battle. So right now I am working on an MPA at Fells, a Master's in Public Administration, which for me is an extension of a set of ideas that I've been doing with this installation called an open notebook that I use to facilitate conversations about creative process and creative thinking. So anything that I talk about or anything that I think about has to do with investigating the way you think about it, investigating how you come up with an idea, how you take an idea apart, how you figure out how to not repeat the same thing, to figure out the difference between a habit and a style or a gesture and the intent behind that. And it's just the deconstruction process is the thing I'm most fascinated with. When I was told symmetry, I initially, it seems very straightforward. It balances, it doesn't balance, it looks the same, it reflects. And I wasn't sure what I could talk about that wasn't very obvious. And in thinking about the direction I've taken in bringing a lot of parts of my work together, I came up with a framework that I've been enjoying putting together. So I would love to talk to you more about it after the presentation to hear how it's sort of sitting with you. But in the meantime, also with dance, the idea of symmetry is incredibly important because you're training your body. You have to do it. You're not allowed to have a better side. Whatever your right side does, your left side has to learn to do. You don't get to not do it in class. You can do it in your choreography. But so it's this continuous process of doing the thing that is uncomfortable and unfamiliar, and in training yourself to always be thinking of what's happening in all directions at the same time. When I talk about symmetry, and I write everything down, so I'll be going up and down and back and forth a little bit. It's extended for me to the framework of work and of life. And I've taken a little bit of a biographical approach. So bear with me while I do a little bit of the arc through my work and some of the choices that I've made. So before I decided to be an undergraduate dance major, let me move this forward. See? Ta-da! I was an engineering major. I had been sort of a very academically focused math and science student. I loved it. I did it really, really well. It was satisfying for a very long time. And by the end of my freshman year, I decided I was going to be a dance major, and I'll go into details when we do Q&A. My parents were not particularly surprised. My extended family was very distraught. And this is my favorite quote from my aunt, who's the matriarch of our family. And she went, "Why would you go jumping around on such a beautiful brain?" And that was, she has maintained that along the while, although she does come to see my work sometimes. So for some people, the thing that comes easily is the thing that you love the most. You love to do it, you love digging into it, you love how it feels, there's the reward of it. It's a really happy marriage of your interest and your goals. For others, and I put myself in that category, the thing that comes easily is not necessarily as interesting, and it's not stimulating enough. And so I've always been interested not necessarily in achieving balance, but in questioning it. And I've been curious about what didn't fit, and in finding access and reasons why things work the way that they do, in finding questions, in taking things apart. My very first bicycle, I discovered it came with, those multi-tool spanner things. And I took every screw that I could find, I took apart, and within like a couple of hours, the entire thing was in pieces, and my parents were in tears. But it was awesome. And I had to figure out how to put it back together, which I did eventually. But the most exciting thing about having the bike was that I had something that could completely, and so many parts of it came apart. Has anyone ever done, you build things, or there are so many tiny things that can come up. Anyway, I'll keep going. So the best outcome for me is always finding the really good question. What is a better question to ask about what it is that you're doing? The answer is just a, sort of a point that takes you to the next question. So every time I looked at something, I wanted to know what would happen and why the answer was the right answer. And so I was a difficult student. I had teachers who loved me, teachers who couldn't wait to get me out of class. But I love the search for order and arriving at an understanding and a sensation of that order is the way I think about symmetry. So we're always searching for the sensation of that order. Pretty. So Alan Lightman, have you guys read Alan Lightman stuff? In the accidental universe, the world you thought you knew, I would claim that symmetry represents order, and we crave order in the strange universe we find ourselves in. The search for symmetry and the emotional pleasure we derive when we find it must help us make sense of the world around us, just as we find satisfaction in the repetition of the seasons and the reliability of friendships. Symmetry is also economy. Symmetry is simplicity. Symmetry is elegance. This is very highly structured choreography. There are a lot of words that convey similar ideas. Symmetry, balance, reflection, familiarity, comfort, the ability to predict, the safety, the expectation, knowing and understanding. It's very organized, it's very arresting, it's incredibly powerful. So engineering, which I thought I was going to do, seemed like it would make sense. Even economics, I'm doing a little bit of economics now and in the program at Fels, and it's fascinating. Everything has an answer, sometimes an unnecessarily complicated answer, but that sort of satisfaction of finding the right thing and knowing what it is incredibly satisfying. So streamlining, identifying, making things perfect, making every experience replicable and reliable. But I studied postmodern dance, and the thing that I loved was the deconstruction. I wasn't looking at how things worked. I was taking them apart all the time, and I was questioning constantly. And it wasn't just tangibles. It was taking apart ideas and taking apart ways of thinking and taking apart my way of thinking especially, and challenging everything I thought I knew 5 minutes before. Math and physics are beautiful. The approach to choreography that I learned in postmodern dance was incredibly mysterious. Whose rules were they? Why were they there? How were they constructed? So we didn't have moves. Does anyone in here make dances? Hi, Avery. Or used to make dances, or took a dance class, or was in a studio? So you remember learning a lot of moves, and then you put the moves in order, and then you did the order of things in a giant pile of people? Yeah, so we didn't learn that. And the idea, it was a tiny program, a small group of people, was that you tried continually to create something you had never seen before, that you didn't imagine any other body had done before in that way at all. And it meant you failed a lot. I mean, we have very similar parts. They move with the similar restrictions depending on your genetics. You know, some people can do that rhythmic gymnastic thing where your parts go in incredible places. But for the most part, we have limitations, and figuring out how to work inside of those limitations is incredibly fascinating and inspiring, because you keep trying to figure out how to not do the thing that you did before. So looking at invention and variation, at you deciding what is right, and you deciding why it's the right choice, and why it's the right choice at that moment. You get to change it, and there are likely to be as many opinions about it as there are people in the room, and that's sort of the nature of art in general. And that's fascinating, and it's frightening, and it's incredibly exciting. So symmetry is this perfect reflection. It's this satisfying repetition. It's beautiful. It's a landing spot for a sense of ourselves. It's what you know to be true. You see it, it repeats over and over in rows and circles and lines and colors and actions when you're in movement. And for me, I think symmetry is best when it's a momentary point of arrival rather than necessarily a destination. So how many people in here really love doing participatory exercises? I know, I feel exactly the same. But yet we're going to do one, even though when people ask me to do them, I internally cringe and object, but I still participate. So, but it's very simple. I'm going to ask you to stand. It won't be challenging at all. And find a person close by. We're gonna do just this very brief thing. So see if you can partner up with someone. I'm available if we have an odd person. It won't take very long. Okay, good. So this is called mirroring. You can hear me still? Which we do in dance competition. Does everyone, composition, everyone has a partner? So I would like you to face your partner. And for our practice exercise, one of you, and you can decide which one of you is going to raise your right hand and the other person is going to follow that exact action as though you were a mirror. So you will be raising your left hand. So ready? Pick the person who's doing it. Go. Bring it up. So it's a mirror. And bring it back down. Very good practice exercise. So now you're going to do that on your own. Any action that you want, keep it relatively simple, right? We don't know each other. I'm assuming we don't know each other that well, and you don't know. We're trying to make it so that it's possible to perform it, not impossible. It's no guessing. Okay. So give yourself like 5 or 10 seconds to do something slowly that your partner can follow. Now switch partners so that your other person's leading. Don't hurt yourself or the person you're performing with. Okay, now pause. I would like you to not decide who's leading and to take turns going back and forth with the leader. So don't speak about it, don't do anything. Just decide when you're leading or not. Make sure you're switching. Nice. Relax, take a rest. That was awesome. And now it's the dreaded response part where I ask you, what did you just experience? And would you like to say something to this room about it? Yes.
It ends up feeling quite natural.
Mm-hmm.
There's a shared energy, and it ends up feeling like you can't do anything wrong, right? Like it just becomes very natural.
That's awesome. Is that same for everyone? Yeah? And can you articulate a little bit the difference between picking a leader and having to switch back and forth? Did that shift anything for you? Yeah.
One thing, I think right at the end, we were both kind of moving. Like there wasn't one person leading and following.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe one person was moving one hand, the other was moving the other. So we're both leading and following at the same time.
Yeah. It's beautiful to watch. But the thing that's beautiful to watch are the continuous decisions that you're making. We're watching you think through the process. We're watching you decide what you're doing next, look at each other, that moment of communication, that slight discomfort when everything pauses because you're not sure what's happening next. And that is as compelling as watching the matching action that you're performing. And so we're hardwired to see what is possible, but conversely, and I like to think of it as being also perversely, the things that drive us are the points of departure. We notice what's missing, we try to fill in the gaps. It's part of what sparks our imagination. It's part of what makes things interesting, both for participating, for me anyway, for many of us, and for observing. And in trying to recreate it, I think that's where we get the inspiration and the excitement. So, let me see if So if we see it continuously, and for people who are creating, especially right now, you lose the significance, right? If it's permanent, if it's always fixed, you lose the significance of the importance of it. But when it emerges, you can find it, and it's incredible. So we're attracted to the balance, but we're inspired or intrigued by the imbalance, by the asymmetry. Like Erica was talking about in the beginning, we recognize the symmetry, we're stimulated by the absence of it. We're stimulated by watching it come together, by the moment when it sort of synthesizes. And so the advantage in creating anything is in building the curiosity and the intrigue and creating a craving for that moment of symmetry, of watching things come together, of noticing how they're further apart and watching how it happens. And that's, for me, the most impactful opportunity. So symmetry is kind of a panacea, I think of it in that way. And asymmetry triggers our search for what might be missing. And so positive and negative space in a lot of different realms. In dance, we do it as sort of the space your body occupies is the positive space, and everything around it is negative space. And our experience of symmetry has to do with the things that we notice aren't there when we're dealing with bodies and moving bodies. So we can satisfy it, but I'm curious about whether we can design processes that take us in and out and that continue to heighten our emotions, the things that make us hold our breath and wonder what's coming next, and in not knowing whether or not we will find a resolution. So in choreography, we notice what's not in balance. If it excites us or if it annoys us. Some people really, really, really love unison. They want to see it all the time. They want to see exactly the same thing happen with everybody in front of them. And if that doesn't happen, it's incredibly frustrating. But that's also, we're looking for a response and emotional heightening. If that's making you frustrated and if you love it and I take it away, when I bring it back, you're incredibly happy, right? So it's part of the arc of the experience that we're creating. So the moment I think that I look for is that moment where you tip your head a little bit to try to get the perspective on something. And so the excitement of that coming back to it. So can I get 2 volunteers? I promise this is the last one. Avery, thank you. Thank you. And your name is?
My name's Kristen.
Kristen. So we have Kristen and Avery.
Come up here.
Yeah. So we're doing a similar thing. If you guys, I'll step out of the way, don't mind. Can you do a small mirroring exercise? So come close to each other. Right here. And just mess around with it. Nothing. Okay, now step a little further apart. More. Okay, over here. Keep going. Okay, get further apart. Keep going. Avery is practically a professional, so she can handle it. Keep going. Okay, further apart. All the way to the edges of the room. And rest. That was awesome. Thank you. So, thank you very much. I love that moment of split attention. Having to choose what thing that you're following and having to figure out what you might be missing because you're looking over there instead of over here. And for me, that's the moment when you captivate people, you get them engaged. Some people love that experience. Of course, it's, some people really want those people, they want it close together so you can see what's happening. But if you give your audience work to do, they are responding. And so that is the thing that I'm really drawn by. So the beauty in unison for me is in watching things come together and in having to choose between what's happening on stage. And when it becomes the norm, it's static, it's sort of I tune it out, you watch it pass by. I think that's why we love reality TV. I think that we get tired of knowing what's happening and that sort of moment of, I don't particularly like reality TV, but many great people, lovely people love reality TV. And, but you're sort of watching the whole thing unfold. You're watching the decisions. You're incredulous about what's happening. You're not sure. It's like it could explode at any second. There's that heightened sense of participation that I think we tend to crave. And if it's not happening, we go looking for it in different places. And we find that satisfaction in different places. But I think we always have a tendency to sort of keep reaching for it a little bit. So has everyone done this one before? So in this image, there is in this photo, picture, drawing, there's an image of an older woman and a younger woman. For those who've never done it before, for the ones who've done it before, can you find both of them? And for the ones who this is a new experience, can you see? Do you see them? Someone describe it for me who has found it or has known it or has done it 1,000 times in their rooms with their friends. Yes.
So describing the younger woman, we see her chin line, and she's looking away from us. The darker portion at the top would be her
I have a pointer, but
would be her hair, where you just described it as almost like a profile of her face, and she could have almost like a shawl or a scarf over her head with black hair and a feather. Right, so that's the younger woman. She's got a choker around her neck. Now,
do we see it? Yeah.
So flipping it towards the older woman, we're really focusing on her face. So the choker is now her lips. The profile and jaw is now her nose. Where an ear would have been is her eye. And then we see hair and then the same like scarf or something.
Yeah.
Did I describe that well?
That was beautiful described. Yes, thank you very much. Huh?
I see it now.
Yeah. But it's that intriguing. It's the visual play, and in movement, it's that physical play where you shift your perspective. You change where the bodies are in relationship to each other, and suddenly the thing that was there looks entirely different. You change where a dancer is on stage. You change right arm or left arm. All of those variations can really shift your frame and shift your experience. And we're looking at shifting experiences. We're looking at taking tiny moments and trying to transform them continually. So you're taking people on a journey with you. So in looking for that satisfaction, sometimes I think we can underestimate the process. I love process. I did choreography because I really, really, really like process. The anticipation and the expectation and the breathlessness. So I think we crave that stimulation, and I think the more quickly we satisfy it, the more we tend to go looking for more of it. So in composition and in contrast, for me, that act of visual balance is the thing that I really love experimenting with. So in teaching composition, I have many different frameworks that I reference in sort of trying to get my dancers to think about things in different ways and think about creating new experiences for themselves and for their audiences. And in doing some of my work at Fells, I've been experimenting with generalizing some of it so that it's not just about making a dance piece necessarily, but about just approaching the way that you think through any kind of problem or any kind of creative situation. So I divide it into, the possibilities are a combination of what you know, what you need, and what you want. And the thing for me that's fascinating is that sort of we take for granted often that this is undisputed. We know what we know what we need, and we know what we want. It's often completely untrue, right? We have assumptions about what those things are, but they aren't necessarily true at all. So, oh wait, I'm gonna come back. So right here is the balance point we're looking for. That perfect combination of the thing we know, the thing we need, and the thing we want that makes it possible, that has that possible, that creative possibility of the response. So deconstructing for anything, and I have a whole other set of questions and parameters that I go through about history and perspective and value and how we make those attributions. But for now, we'll stick with this and go with what we know. The assumption of what we know. The question we come back to in looking at stuff, where did that idea come from? Where did that information come from? What has shaped it? And is that really all there is, right? So that seems pretty straightforward. Like, this is the thing that I think I know. Where did I learn it? How did I come to it? Was it habit? Was it family history? Was it environment? Was it expectation? Is that the sum of all knowledge that there is about this thing? How did I encounter it? What is my reaction to it? Is my reaction based on which sets of things and which sets of experiences? And for me, that's the creative inquiry. You're asking yourself why you hold the opinions that you do and why you're attempting the thing that you do in the way that you are. And there's the thing that I need, and they're all extension questions. Why do I think that I need this? Because someone told me that that's how I should approach it? Because that's what I've seen happen before? And the answers can be yes. Yes is a perfectly good answer in a lot of scenarios, but the process of inquiring about it is what we're going towards. And then all of that follows. Same thing, where did it come from? What has shaped it? And then what we want. And it's the same process of inquiry. Why do you want this thing? What is it that familiarity brings to you? What does it satisfy for you? It might be that it makes me feel really good about myself, or I put this sweater on today because it's my grandma's sweater, or somebody told me to do it and I have to finish it. And sometimes that is the answer. There's no other creative inquiry. This is a task. It has to be completed. It has to be done. And therefore, that's what's happening at this moment in the way that it has been described. So I love doing these. We had to do it for a change management module at Fells, and I spent hours going over all of these diagrams and how they can possibly come together. But this process of investigation and reflection, and I talk about what you're afraid of, your uncertainty, what you don't know, and what remains unchallenged in everything that you do, right? So this is me. I'm afraid of it. This is too much to handle. It's never going to work. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to fall off the cliff. I'll die. Everybody's died. The world's going to explode. It'll end. This is the uncertainty. Well, it could work, but I'm not really sure. Should I try it? Should I not? I don't know. Maybe. But you can't quite step into it. So different from being afraid of it, right? You might do it if you're uncertain. If you're afraid, you're just like, nah, it's not happening. The unknown. You're not even sure. Have you asked yourself if there are other options or other ways of approaching it or other things to do? And then unchallenged. It's the thing you know, right? I know it. I'm going to do it. Nobody's going to tell me not to. It's going to be fine because it's always been fine and it's always been done the way that it's been done before, and it's all great. So in the investigation, we're trying to figure out how to identify some of these things and how to avoid replicating them with the decisions that we make. You can ask me questions at any point. I forgot to say that in the beginning. I get excited, but that doesn't mean that you can't sort of raise your hand and interrupt. I get excited to talk to other people as well. So this is what I call the responsive balance, that center of the want, need, know, little, Venn diagram overlap. And it's always going to look different. It might be that you know a lot and you only want a little bit and you only need a tiny amount. It might be that you need incredible amounts of all of it. It might be, I don't know what the proportion is, but in asking questions about it, you figure out the proportion, right? So if I'm piece of choreography, Avery, can you be my dad? I know I can call on her, so.
I'm rusty. It's been a while.
We're not gonna do anything too fantastical. This is just sort of basic composition. So it's, I'm asking, so we're standing here next to each other. I'm putting up my right hand, she's putting up her right hand. So we don't really need to do anything different, but so I'm gonna say, so let's change levels. So this is an amazing student. So here, right? This was something that I wanted that I probably needed just a little bit. Like we could have just been in the same position, but this is infinitely more interesting to me. Maybe not to you because you really like the more sort of static balanced image, but this is infinitely more interesting. So we'll change facing. No, I don't like that way. So you stay. Okay. So facing, here, right? And there are extensions of it. Let us shift. We did facing, we did level. What did we leave out? Focus and shift gesture, body part gesture. So instead of my arm, I have my leg. I haven't done this in heeled boots. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Tiny little bit of sort of compositional phrasing. We can take it apart, we can figure out, and this was not based on an idea. So if your choreography is based on an idea, then the idea feeds what your gesture is. For me, that is, because I come back to that idea of being trained to come up with something that no one has ever seen before, which is practically impossible, but you can play with it a little bit. So if my gesture is about a video camera, I can try to make a frame. That's incredibly literal and not very interesting, but that was the best that I could do at that particular moment. But it's the sort of what you generate because of the thing that you're thinking about. So in coming through here, when I started thinking about this idea of asymmetry and symmetry, and I thought about where the questions landed, it sort of broke down into these areas for me. And I think about it in terms of dance. I think about it in terms of writing. I write a lot for my work. I think about it in terms of presenting or designing experiences for conversations with people. That the thing that we're coming for, the balance, the action we want balance, the answer we want balance, and this includes the word balance. So obviously we're looking for balance inside of it. But here, in the area where it's unbalanced, this is the idea. The idea doesn't know what it needs yet. The idea doesn't know what it is yet. So it's all over the place. It's sort of standing on one foot and tipping backwards, and this is going to help you figure out, and it's the back and forth that helps you figure out how those things work together. The question is the same thing. It's the curiosity, it's the impulse, it's the thing that starts us going in the direction that we want. And then this is just that idea of figuring out what our response is going to be. And these are they're similar things. And this is all the inquiry behind how it is we want to approach some of the stuff that we do. So ultimately, we cannot satisfy everyone, and some will be more or less at ease with the familiarity. It's challenging to find the right balance of comfort and discomfort. Some people are going to love what you do, some people are going to hate what you do. But are you clear about the reasons why you're doing the thing that you do and why you've made your choices? Because that is part of your response, and that is part of the conversation. And I always say the goal for me is to remain curious and to remain aware and intrigued by what might be possible that you haven't seen, and to question everything all the time, especially yourself and especially the work that you're engaged in. So I wanted to close with a little bit from my last solo performance that I did. It's an excerpt from some of the text from a piece called Crazy Beautiful. We break everything. Everything ruptures and fractures, looking for its expression and its balance. Everything happens in the cracks in between. Everything is born from effort. Everything rips open, spills, and pours itself into existence. Everything is built on ashes and memory. Everything used to be something else before it broke. Everything rips open, spills, and pours itself into existence. All our pieces, hastily glued, carefully cemented, precariously balanced, mismatched, edges fit somewhere. Make space, find balance, and then let it go. Thank you.